Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Welcome to In the City. Each week, we unpack a story that's crucial to the world's financial capitals. I'm Allegra Stratton. So, we know that it's a big news week, but interestingly, uncertainty in the Middle East has not yet had a huge effect on the markets. We also are not unaware, promise you, that there's been a G7, and out of that, the UK did get some progress on its trade agreement with the US. But even so, what has got many people talking in the city is what on earth may or may not be happening to the Chancellor's crackdown on non-doms. This week, we return to that decision that Rachel Reeves made to essentially end the non-dom status. There are rumours that she may be about to do a U-turn.
Welcome to the City of London.
The City of London.
The next station is Bank. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform.
The financial heart of the country.
The City.
The City.
Welcome to In the City.
Stand clear of the doors, please.
OK, so look, some news outlets are reporting Rachel Reeves could reverse a decision to charge inheritance tax on the overseas assets of non-doms. We're going to get into how substantiated those claims are in our conversation shortly. But before that, let's have a quick look at the impact of the policy. Our latest reporting shows that the exodus of non-doms could lead to a net drain on the UK economy, with estimates suggesting we could lose thousands of jobs and up to 12.2 billion over the coming 4 years. Now, the journalist behind that is Ben Stupples, and he joins us in the London studio. Ben covers the world of the ultra-wealthy for Bloomberg News in London. Ben, hi.
Hi.
All right, Ben, before we get on to whether or not your sources believe that there is this U-turn coming on the non-dom status, quickly just give us a sense of how much of an impact it's had.
Yeah, thanks, Allegra. It's certainly had an impact. Now, let's just unpack that for a second. Being a data business, we sort of tried to take a data-driven approach to this. So what we looked at was, in the end, thanks to my colleague Max Harlow, very talented data guy in our newsroom, we analysed 5 million filings in Companies House. That's a pretty comprehensive data set. And what the question we asked within that was, there are certain filings you have to make if you are a director, a business leader in the UK, if you are going to live somewhere else. So we searched for that filing and we found that year on year, April 2025, the filings for that month were about 75% higher than a year before. Now, why is that important? That month, the non-dom system ended. The concept of non-dom ceased to exist from early April. So what we can see here, maybe for the first time, is a definitive signalling, an indication that not all is well with Britain's, what I guess we could term, billionaire economy. And we hadn't had that before. Now, why haven't we had that? The way non-doms have to disclose the way that they have the status and all that stuff, it's not like a normal taxpayer. There's a bit of a lag in the time that HMRC, the UK tax authority, collects and publishes the data for that. So actually, HMRC, on the back of us publishing a big story last week, said that they will put out the final numbers out in 2027. So in the meantime, we're sort of stuck in this sort of a bit of a guessing game. And we're just doing our very best to try and use the data that exists right now to try and have a sense of, is this really working for Britain?
So Ben, do you, from the sources you have in the Treasury, do you think that the Financial Times that first reported there was a U-turn coming on this end to the non-dom status, or certainly, substantial tweaks, do you think that that's incorrect, or do you think something's afoot?
I can certainly understand why this might be on Rachel Reeves' desk in the Treasury. Why? Because, first and foremost, this is the topic causing the biggest heartburn, is what the Financial Times reported, actually. That's the word they used. Yeah, heartburn, heartache. This is the biggest problem for the non-dom changes. Why is that? It is because we previously were actually quite deliberate in saying to non-doms, we're only going to tax you on what's happening in the UK. Create a business here, you pay tax on that. Everything else that's overseas, shares in your holding company, let's say you're an Indian steel tycoon or a European tech entrepreneur, don't worry about all that stuff. Just worry about what's going on in the UK. If you live here long enough, 15 years, yeah, you'll eventually pay full UK tax on that. But what Rachel Reeves has done is go after from pretty much, instead of 15 years, we now have 4 years, right? So that's a big deal. We've slashed the time that people are now exposed to UK tax on their overseas assets. And so it was the biggest issue, and it was raising only 500 million, according to Office for Budget Responsibility's forecast, out of an overall package that was meant to raise more than 30 billion. Now let's think about this from a sort of pragmatic power, politically,
Yeah.
How does this look in the Treasury and beyond when you're also hiking taxes for inheritance tax for British farmers? You're also doing it for UK business entrepreneurs, right? So we've also hiked, Rachel Reeves said those with the broadest shoulders must bear the brunt of all this. Business owners are getting a massive whack on inheritance tax. So right now, we don't know for sure if this is going to come down the line. Basically, this is all what we can define it now as, I guess, speculation ahead of the next budget, which will be based on previous years, October, November time. So the drum of speculation is already starting over what was announced only months ago, right, and just been enacted into law. This is clear. This is actual legislation. So we need another Act of Parliament to, as far as I understand it, we need another Act of Parliament to amend all these and to make any other big wholesale changes.
The reason why this is a hair that's convincing to have running is that there is now a recent history of U-turns. And so it feels completely conceivable that if evidence comes in that it's backfiring, that she would want to reverse track. But you're also right that she's also got pressure from her left in the Labour Party, given what they're doing with farmers and so on, to keep up the sort of parity. We can't know now, and we won't know now what they will end up doing. But I wonder whether you can give us insight into whether it would even help if she were to do this. I mean, what I find interesting about your reporting are the analysts you speak to who say, look, there's a trust issue here now. So say they did reverse on this. What's to say, given everything any intelligent person is reading about the state of the public finances, what's to say, yes, she gives non-doms a reprieve now, but what about in another year when things are sticky, perhaps even harder fiscally?
You're completely right. You asked me what my sources have said in the back of this. We did survey a lot of private wealth sources yesterday asking, hey, did you see this coming? A lot of them said, frankly, Ben, the horse has already bolted, to quote one source. If Rachel Reeves does this now, it doesn't even matter, really. Yeah, it's a big issue. But actually what we've had here is, it's not a single decision that made non-doms go. Let's just rewind the tape a little bit. It wasn't actually the Labour who came out with these moves in the first place. It was the Tories in March 2024. And then Rishi Sunak calls the election. And then we get Labour saying, we're going to do that and we're going to go even further. So that was in July. So in the build-up to July with Labour winning the election and then after, a lot of non-doms went, okay, well, I was thinking of going, but now I'm definitely going to go. And then we had Rachel Reeves standing up at the budget saying, I'm doing this. So that was almost like a triple whammy. It wasn't like sort of like a one-stop hit, right?
No.
A sort of a hit-and-run legislative sort of move.
A systematic ratcheting up of pressure on this group.
Yeah. And then the broader context here is a lot of non-doms were already settled even before that. Why? Because, things about Brexit and the fallout of that. You think about we've had, half a dozen prime ministers within the past decade. So Britain's traditionally attracted the global elite. Why? Because of the political and economic and legal stability. They always come up when you talk to ultra-high net worths about why they love London, why they love living in Britain. We've actually pulled the rug from under their feet for those three reasons, really, over the last decade. And if Rachel Reeves, to bring it full circle, if Rachel Reeves then says, actually, I'm going to scrap all that inheritance tax stuff, the thing that I was really making a big song and dance over for non-doms, we're not going to do it now. It actually furthers that narrative that you can't really trust Britain now. You're not really economically and fiscally secure here.
Yeah, you've got sort of a double vulnerability for her. One, it's your kind of lack of clarity and conviction in what she believes. And then secondly, the direction of travel is that there's a hole in the public finances rather than, don't worry, the public finances are fixed. But just looking at the other jurisdictions that have really aggressively been pursuing the British ultra high net worth individuals, as we say, rather than the super rich, which used to be the phrase a few years ago. I mean, you've got Italy and cities like Milan, you've got Dubai, you've got Trump too, with his Trump cards or his golden visas, trying to entice the rich to America with, the possibility of becoming a US citizen quite easily. How much of these other offers much more attractive than the environment in the UK now.
Italy's a really good example, actually. This is a sort of a policy for them that's actually, it's run through, as far as I understand it, it's run almost through like a sort of central government hub. So it's very systematic and it's very consistent. You don't have the language in Milan. You do have to speak Italian a lot of the time. But I would say it's the closest sort of like for like. And they've got a more attractive regime now. That's actually now 15 years, which is what we previously had for a non-dom regime. But now if you're in Italy, you've got 15 years. And in the UK, it's 4. I mean, that's a pretty, if you're looking at a spreadsheet, it sort of makes sense. And hey, life in Italy isn't that bad. And this is a crucial thing as well. You can get around. If you go in Milan, Malpensa, if you've ever been there in the summer holidays, Allegra, you can get around pretty easily, and you can get to London as well.
What are you saying about London's public transport?
Exactly, yeah.
And their inheritance tax regime is much more generous, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a crucial one, Allegra.
And I think that from the people that we have heard from in the city in the sort of 9 to 12 months that this has been a particularly acute problem, it is that inheritance tax aspect that has completely freaked out a generation of people for whom it is very pertinent. Yes, and Italy's been very good on that. And even if you end up living in Italy for, let's say, 20 to 30 years, you settle down, you have your grandkids there, well, are you exposed to 40%? No, you're not. I think it's about 4%, top of my head. So, massively different. And just other jurisdiction I'd highlight. Jurisdictions, I would say Abu Dhabi's done a very good job. Dubai is pretty strong. That's, in terms of marketing themselves, Abu Dhabi has a central government hub agency that actually is really, I would say, rolling out the red carpet globally. But I would say they're not blind to the fact that, London's a pretty active market for movements. So, Ben, just to kind of try and tie this all together, and we do try on In the City to be somewhat positive. If you were the Chancellor and you're looking at the numbers that you set out very clearly at the beginning of this pod, what would be the smart thing to do to say, look, I've obviously damaged trust, but I really need you guys to stay, guys and girls to stay. You are GDP critical to what I'm trying to do. What would you suggest she do with some credibility to actually keep them in London? The big elephant in the room is the fact that we scrapped our golden visa regime in 2022 because we were keen at the time to clean out any Russian money that we didn't think should be here. Now, that was a big deal. And we haven't replaced it since then. And you mentioned earlier that US President Donald Trump is making a big song and dance about, the Trump card, the US golden visa, bring it in, I'd be looking at that if I was both Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, for that matter. It's interesting, we did report that they were looking at some sort of strategic investor visa, and that got a lot of tongues wagging, not just in the, private wealth community, but beyond that. That's interesting. I think it's politically defendable for Starmer and Reeves. They came to power saying they are keen for growth. That's their number one priority. Well, if you want someone from overseas to invest in Britain's infrastructure, which, has a broader economic benefit for that, right, from the high to the low classes, that's defendable, I would say. And more possible than, I would say, doing anything wholesale change with the non-dom stuff where they've pinned their colours to the mast, they've said we're going to do this, and if they do anything to change it, then it speaks to, you can't trust Labour with the economy, you can't trust Labour with all of, the non-dom stuff, and it speaks to the broader issues that made non-doms unsettled in the first place. Ben, that's a brilliant place to leave it. Thank you so much, and good luck with your reporting. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this week's In the City from Bloomberg. This episode was hosted by me, Allegra Stratton. In the City is produced by Summer Sardi and Moses Andam, with sound design by Blake Maples. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive producer. And special thanks to Ben Stupples. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to podcasts.